Welcome to The Brain Plate, the podcast blending nutrition and psychology to help you thrive. So whether you are trying to improve your focus, reduce anxiety, or live a comprehensive, holistic lifestyle, let's dig in.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the Brain Plate podcast. Today is our third official episode within this new brand of the podcast, which means that it's going to be a off-topic but on-topic, if that makes sense.
Such a play on words.
Yeah. As you guys know, we want to blend nutrition and psychology within our podcast. And the way that we're going to be doing that today is by talking about a criminal case that blends the both of them. It's called the Twinkie defense. For people who are in criminology, maybe even in psychology, have heard about this, most likely. But for those who have not, we're going to take a deeper dive into this and trying to link it to nutrition and psychology. So the Twinkie defense stems from a trial of Dan White from 1979. This legal strategy, or the way this case was set up, it became very famous for its reference to the Twinkie. The Twinkie is a type of candy often sold in the US. I don't know if it's sold anywhere else. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it here in the Netherlands, so it might be.
I don't think it is.
Okay, so it might be.
I think part of the this is speculation, but I think part of the ingredient is actually banned in most countries.
Well, there you go. But as it's known for the sugary snack, it also opens a door to a deeper question, and that is, how does what we eat affect how we think, feel, and even behave? So the question is, can nutrition influence our mental states to the extent that it might impact decisions and actions as claimed in this case? We're going to be talking about courtroom drama in a way as a lens to explore how our diet and mental health intertwine and intersect. So this isn't about just this man's trial. It's also about understanding what fuels our bodies and our minds, but also how the science of psychology can add to this topic and the science of nutrition. So we're going to take a deeper dive into the Twinkie defense today.
Yes, and if you can't already tell, Mart's been very excited for this for like 3 months now. She's been waiting for this podcast episode. So
the first thing that I said to Leah when we were talking about wanting to do like a off-topic but on-topic topic was, I want to do the Twinkie defense.
Yeah, this is the only thing she wanted to do. Nothing else. She wants to do this one. So we're going to summarize kind of in a nutshell this case. So the Twinkie defense emerged, as Mart said, in 1979, trial of Dan White, who was a San Francisco politician accused of first-degree murders by Mayor George Moscone.
And, I don't know how you say it.
And Supervisor Harvey Milk. That is such an ironic last name. White's defense team argued that his mental state was compromised due to depression, which was actually, they claim, exacerbated by an unhealthy diet high in junk food, such as the Twinkies. This unusual argument claimed that his consumption of sugary snacks was a reflection of his diminished mental state.
Yes.
Which impacted his plan and impacted his ability to plan and execute this crime. Wouldn't that be a positive? Anyway, we're continuing on.
No, so I think what is being meant with this is that um, they, um, I forgot the word, they claimed, I would use that one, that because he used these snacks, his ability to plan and execute the crime was diminished. Hence, it's not first degree murder, but a lesser charge. Because of the snacks, like he cannot plan such a first degree murder.
Gotcha. All
Yeah.
right. And so to summarize this case, as a result, the jury convicted him of voluntary manslaughter
Yeah.
rather than first degree murder, which significantly reduces his sentence.
Yeah, so that's what the defense tried to do. They try to say, like, okay, this man has depression. He has such an unhealthy diet, eats Twinkies all the time, and this sugar impacts his ability to think. So, how do you think that this person can plan a murder when he's eating this food all the time? So, that's what they're claiming. And it worked because the jury convicted him of voluntary manslaughter instead of first degree murder, which reduces your sentence significantly. Let's get into some key moments of this case. In 1978, so a year before this all went down, Dan White, the accused, resigned from his position as a city supervisor, but he later sought to be reinstated. Tension between him and Major Moscone, Mayor, what did I said?
Major.
Oh, Major, Mayor. I did not mean Major, but Mayor. Moscone, don't know, escalated. And White eventually shot and killed both the mayor and the supervisor in November of 1978.
Yeah, and during this trial, throughout the year of 1979, White's defense team introduced what is now well known as the Twinkie defense, claiming that his mental health, particularly his depression, was so severe that it led to a breakdown in his decision-making abilities.
Which then the jury found him guilty of voluntary manslaughter instead of the first degree murder. He received a much lighter sentence of 7 years and 8 months in prison, but he served just 5. He probably got out on good behavior and had probation after. But you could get up to like 25 years or life for first degree murder. So this man got very lucky.
Yes. So kind of to introduce the Twinkie defense argument that the accused defense team presented. It was a controversial argument, at least at the time, that diet, particularly in excess of the sugary foods, so candies,
the Twinkies,
like any kind of highly processed sugary food, could influence someone's mental state to the point where it could diminish their ability to form intent or plan, such as this in the case of this murder. The defense suggested that Dan White's unhealthy diet, marked by his consumption of overly processed foods, was a sign of his deteriorating mental health. The claim rested on the broader notion that poor nutrition could affect brain chemistry, mood, cognitive function, potentially impacting his behavior and decision-making abilities.
Yeah, so that's the defense suggestion and their defense strategy. As Leah said, this is now well known throughout criminal justice procedures as the Twinkie defense. But the real question is, and this is kind of a discussion point for us, could a change in diet really contribute to diminished capacity? Or do you think, Leah, that this argument that the defense had was a stretch?
Personally, I think for a defense, it's a stretch. However, the overconsumption of these types of foods and just unhealthy, non-nutrient dense foods, non-whole foods,
Yeah.
more processed foods, it does change the mind. It can enhance symptoms of depression. It can enhance tiredness, fatigue, etc. It can
Yeah.
cause kind of the typical phrase of uh, foggy brain or brain fog. But to take it as far as to say that the planning and execution of a murder cannot be done, I don't think I necessarily agree with.
So here's my thing, right? It's the case happened in 1979. 79, which is a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Research was not as prevalent as it is now, especially on that topic. So if you have a defense attorney come in and claim brain chemistry, cognitive functioning, all these high level words, then as a jury, I think you're pretty impressed by what is being said, especially if you're not into academics or something like
For
that
sure, for sure.
whatsoever. So I think the defense here used a pretty smart strategy to reduce the sentence. Now, in reality, do I think these types of foods will really diminish one's brain capacity to the point where it goes from first degree murder to voluntary manslaughter? I don't think so. Because the research now does show that eating like that has negative effects on your brain. But to plan a murder, I don't think it affects the brain that much.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we do know, maybe not all the mechanisms, but we definitely do know, and we have established that anything from overconsumption in general, overconsumption of processed foods, overconsumption of like the sugary food, as mentioned in this case, can cause, fatigue, mood swings, brain fog, irritability, lack of concentration. But again, that's all, maybe you can't sit still for as long as you used to, or you can't concentrate for an hour. Now it's only 15-20 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Like, it's not to the point where you can't go to school and do your homework, or you can't, you know, take care of yourself independently, and you can't go to work and be a good employee. It's not to that extent necessarily.
Because I think this claims that sugar and junk food alters the brain so much that it becomes a mental disorder. Almost.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, that's pretty close to what they're claiming.
Yeah.
I mean, they're claiming
Um,
basically that he was, quote, maybe not to this far, but reaching towards the realm of he was mentally unstable due to consuming
yeah.
sugar.
Honestly, the moment this case also popped up, I was like, I'm shocked at this point that they didn't claim not guilty by reason of insanity due to sugar. Like that's kind of what they tried to do by claiming this. That his brain capacity was so diminished that he didn't know what he was doing. That is the base of not guilty by reason of insanity.
Yeah, exactly. It is quite an interesting point, especially given the time. In
Yeah,
1979, like, processed food was quite a big deal. Um,
yeah,
Shelf stable food was a big deal still. Twinkies, any kind of like little Debbie treats, like all that is
yeah.
like huge. It's a huge thing, growing part of Americans' diet. And if something like this came across, like, why did that not take some sort of legal action of taking this kind of food off the shelf?
Right. And why didn't more people start murdering people? Because, no, I'm serious. Because I wouldn't say necessarily the majority, but a big part of the American population was eating a similar diet. But they didn't go around and kill people.
I'd love to see like court documents if they like presented his diet, like if they did like a diet food log and see just how many he was consuming.
Yeah, maybe like 2 Twinkies. It's like, what?
Yeah, like, or was he eating, 5 boxes a day, which is,
Yeah,
20 plus.
that would be absurd. I have to say though, the public reacted to this case, and they were in disbelief and they were outraged. A lot of the people saw this as an absurd and insufficient explanation for murder. Ethical questions arose about the potential for external factors, such as diet, mental health, or stress, to be used to mitigate accountability for one's actions. So the question is then again, was Dan White being absolved because of factors beyond his control? Or was this simply a legal strategy that relied on public skepticism of the defense?
I really think that they, for personal belief, based on what has been presented and what has been reviewed, that they went with this defense because they were confident that they could put together a well-formed argument to cause at least one person to be like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, here's the reality of the situation. You have a dude who killed 2 people. So he's going to go to prison. As a defense lawyer, attorney, you look at this case and you're like, okay, the prosecution is probably going to say what's it called? Revenge or spite because he doesn't like that he isn't being reinstated in his position. That's probably what the prosecution went for. And the defense is like, okay, so they're going to do that. What is something that we can bring to the courtroom that can make the judges or the jury belief, like switch their belief to, okay, he's not doing it out of spite, he's doing it because he's diminished in mental capacity. They looked at his diet and they were like, you've been eating like crap, we're going to say the food is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how I think the whole Twinkie defense came to life.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I do kind of question is, I guess a version of this is, what if he did have struggle with a mental health disorder, like a serious one? Why would they not just, what's the right word? Why would they not just claim that and instead put the blame on food? Like, you know what I mean?
Maybe because he didn't have any other mental health issues besides having a crappy diet.
But I think, if I remember correctly, in some of the paperwork from the defense attorney, they mentioned that he had been suffering from a mental illness since the time of
depression.
Depression. And that he would have like manic depressive episodes, which those cannot really be, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but those can't really be, not explained's not the right word, but prevented? Like, you don't really have control over those.
So what I see now is that he was just like diagnosed with depression.
Okay.
I could be wrong. If anyone hears this and it's like, no, he had more, let me know. But from what I see, it's that he only had depression. So yeah, the defense team argued that his mental state was diminished due to depression, and that the food only made it worse.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
So again, as Mara had mentioned earlier, this case speaks to a broader issue of personal responsibility in the face of mental health struggles. And if poor diet and mental health can diminish an individual's capacity for rational thought, to what extent should they be held accountable for their actions?
So this is always a point of debate within the criminal justice, because it's like the same with any sort of substance use charges. Substance use charges can never be not guilty by reason of insanity, because a person chooses to use these substances. It is not a mental disorder out of their control, right? So the same with this is, let's say it is known that certain foods, just like certain drugs, mess up your mental capacity, but you choose to use it regardless. Hence, you're being held accountable for your actions because you could have prevented it by not taking the food or by not taking the substance. So when you ask this question, if poor diet and mental health can diminish an individual's capacity for rational thought, to what extent should they be held accountable for their actions? I think if you have a mental disorder that really is out of your control, and you act or you commit a crime during a manic episode that is out of your control, sure, how accountable are you? But when you take certain foods knowing what the risk can be for these foods and you commit an action that is illegal, I do think you should be held accountable because you could have prevented it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a fine line of what can be controlled and what can't. There are definitely mental disorders out there that
Yeah.
go beyond what you can control
Yeah.
without extensive help. And yeah, I think that I feel like almost when you have something like that or you're suffering from something like that, isn't that kind of the definition of insanity?
Yeah, but they have reversed, like, you can't be insane anymore. They took that definition from the DSM and just from the dictionary, because the word insane is downplaying to someone. So they call it mental disordered, for example. But they still call it not guilty by reason of insanity, which you still have the word insanity.
Yeah, I mean, I
So,
think it's something that's hard because everyone's gonna argue one way or the other.
yeah.
But yeah, definitely. Is it right to claim sugary foods is what caused you to or prevented you from not killing someone? Like because I ate these sugary foods, I couldn't
Yeah.
stop
True,
myself
true,
from.
true. But then, then we're back to um the question of, like, okay, even if sugary foods and processed foods make you go all nuts, and you know this, and you yet consume them, and you act on that craziness or whatever, and you kill someone,
Yeah.
does that mean you then need a lesser charge just because at that moment in time your mental capacity was diminished, but you chose to do that?
Yeah.
And that is also the reason why, like, there are so many psychological assessments done when someone
Mhm.
is being detained and being charged and going through a whole process, because they need to determine accountability, but also how mentally aware were you of what you were doing. And it's a tough process to figure out whether or not someone was or is fully accountable for their actions.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just one of those things that I feel like will always continue into a cycle of debate. I feel like it's
Yeah,
one of those things that there's never going to be a right answer.
no, no. And that's why you got to draw a line somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, some people, I don't know if it is, but some people want DUIs to be first degree murders because they believe that getting into a vehicle intoxicated and then killing someone, it's like you have the power to kill someone when you step into that car intoxicated, but you choose to do so. So there are continuously debates on who is accountable for what and where do we draw a line. And it's also hard because different states have different laws, so it's not
That
consistent
is, yeah,
federally.
that's true. That's true because it's all normally put in to like the state's hand, even though there are some
Yeah.
federal overarching rules or laws.
So it's like, in the state of Illinois, I don't know if it's true, but in the state of Illinois, you could get first degree murder when you kill someone when driving under the influence. But in Missouri, it's only like a misdemeanor.
Hmm.
And so that makes it also difficult, I think, to really be on the same level as a justice system. But
Yeah.
that's a whole other debate that is very
Yes.
off topic.
So we're gonna reflect based off of this case and everything that was involved in the case. We're gonna reflect a little bit now on how diet can influence your own mental health and decision making. Since that we see nutrition playing a crucial role in brain function, specifically talking about poor diet with high intake of sugar, processed foods, um, unhealthy fats, etc. We see that contributing to mood swings, fatigue, and decreased focus, as we had mentioned earlier. And these factors can impact the one's ability to make rational decisions in everyday life. So while the Twinkie defense that we had previously discussed, may have been an extreme case, it did open up discussions about how diet affects the mental state.
Yeah. And, I think you can have discussions about this topic for a very long time, going all the way into accountability and all that stuff. But it does make you think about the effect that food has on you, which also ties into different episodes that we have discussed and also will be discussing. Um, so we have some practical tips for you to think about when eating to increase your brain activity or brain chemistry or whatever you want to call it. So, foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids, usually fish, like salmon, nuts, walnuts, and foods high in antioxidants found in fruits and vegetables, can help support brain function and emotional balance. So, if you don't eat enough of those products, maybe take a supplement of omega-3 if you want to boost that um, brain function. Also, go ahead.
I was just gonna say there those are just like some examples of some nutrients, but in general, like any kind of nutrient dense food that has adequate amounts, like for example protein, like whole protein, not the plant version of protein. True protein has certain amino acids in them. The composition of it
Yeah.
is critical for neurotransmitters in the brain to stay activated and to be healthy. So like literally any kind of nutrient dense food will help the brain.
Yeah. And then to tackle kind of mood swings, Carbohydrates and protein can provide some energy throughout the day. And that is if you take it in, not continuously as in every 30 minutes, but like don't take only breakfast, then lunch, and then late dinner. Maybe take a little snack in between because this provides the flow of energy, which also reduces mood swings. So reduces the chance of you killing someone when your brain chemistry is all fucked up.
I mean, there is a word called hangry for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. So I bet this Dan was very hangry at the time. Or he was high on sugar. It's one of the two.
Either way.
And then also just staying hydrated um, can help maintain mental clarity, but also avoiding excessive sugar intake. We challenge you to avoid sugar as much as you can for the next 2 weeks and feel the difference. You are going to feel so much better.
Yeah, exactly. And anything, just take out the sweets. Like, you don't really need them. They are addictive because of the sugar. Sugar plays an
Yeah.
addictive role in your desire for it. And just
Yeah.
eat natural sweeteners like honey and fruits and vegetables because
But not too
ultimately
much.
that will give you enough of the natural sugar that you need
Yeah.
to stay healthy without basically poisoning yourself with the processed sugars and sweets.
To kind
So
of wrap it up. Oh, sorry.
no,
What
go
were
ahead.
you going to say?
No.
Okay. To kind of wrap it up, we want to consider the legacy of this case. So the Twinkie defense left a lasting impact on both the legal and the public surrounding mental health and accountability. It highlighted how external factors like diet, stress, and mental health could be introduced into court cases to influence a defendant's level of accountability. You see it more often nowadays with mental health problems. Not as much, I think, with diet and stress, but more the mental health problems. This case also triggered further conversation and research about the intersection of psychology, criminal law, and diet. It kind of provoked people to start looking into this topic more and more. And because of that, in the recent years, there have been multiple cases where defendants have used mental health or diminished capacity arguments based on psychological factors. However, the debate around how far these defenses should go remains ongoing.
Yeah,
Like we
I
are
think
discussing today, we're still discussing like how far should a defense push it to lesser someone's sentence.
yeah, I do also think it is kind of difficult to wrap your head around because lawyers, like, they're hired to make a case and win,
Yeah,
basically whatever it takes
yeah,
within reason. I mean, here they didn't, it appears like they didn't do any kind of like criminal activity in the defense. They just made a really good argument on how nutrition plays, which is in all purposes, like, you can't deny, you
and
can't really
especially for that
prove.
time.
Yeah. I think it's actually kind of amazing given this time and given where the research was at this time
Yeah,
on these kind of foods that they got away with it, because I would think the public would be like, oh, they are just like talking to talk, and like, why is this not like
yeah,
well known, like they aren't even really citing anything, they're just making this claim. I feel
yeah.
like it would have been harder to make that connection and make that case and make that defense then than it would be now.
It would be, but also I do think that in some way it would have been easier because you probably have a jury without academics who are not into, citing research and where is your sources. So if you're a jury and you hear these claims about research shows that mental health and diet, blah, 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 you're like, oh, wow, this man knows what he's talking about. Like, I can see that effect as well in
Yeah,
that
that's
time,
true.
especially.
That's true. So in recent years, there have been some similar parallels and similar controversies to this case. Courts have seen cases where mental health conditions, for example, PTSD, and even depression, as such the Twinkie case was, have been used as mitigating factors in these criminal cases. The increasing recognition of the role that diet and physical health play in mental well-being might lead to more cases where these factors are presented as part of a defense strategy.
Yeah, it's true. So this case definitely opened up some more leadway for other people who have committed crimes and want to build a good defense. But we want to ask you guys, what do you think? Can diet really influence our mental state to this degree? Do you believe that what we eat can significantly impact our decisions and actions, or do you think the Twinkie defense was just a stretch to avoid taking full responsibility for a crime? We would like to know your thoughts or experiences, or if you have any other information that we may have missed on this case that is very detrimental to this case. We would like to know. But we're also curious to hear how you think diet has influenced your mental health and decision making during your life.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So I guess we will leave with that question. If you want to talk more about this case, don't be afraid to message us. I'm very happy we got to do this.
Lauren's ready for everything about this case.
I am so ready. This is my field. I love it. No, but let us know what you think of doing an episode like this, because the first two were more scientific, looking at different research, and this is more a fun case and fun topic, as we like to call it. So let us know what you think of us doing more episodes like this, or what other topics you might be interested in learning more about.
Yeah, for sure.
So thank you very much, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. That's it for today's episode of The Brain Plate. Remember, small changes lead to big impact. Keep feeding your body and mind with intention. See you next time.